Are we ready in there? Probably, okay. Okay, thanks, Derek. I'll call the October meeting of the Trempealeau County Personnel Bargaining Committee to order at 9:03. Certify the open meeting law requirements have been met. I don't think we have an amended agenda. I don't see anything. So, motion by Johnson, second by Nutter to adopt the 12-item agenda. Doesn't look like anyone wants to input here. All in favor say aye. 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 Opposed, same sign. The minutes from the 9/16 meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Nelson, second by Johnson. Any corrections, additions? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes as printed, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. They are approved. This is interesting. Overtime compensation on holidays for non-represented sheriff's office employees for discussion, possible action. And the sheriff is here, the chief deputy is here. What's this about? Pull the chair.
So this has to do with the recent settlement of the union contract,
Sure.
in which the represented staff now, if they choose to work a holiday that they're assigned to work, that they'll be paid time and a half for that, working that day. The settlement of the contract would not address the supervisors that supervise them that have to work that same day. Because our supervisors work the same rotating schedules and can work and would be potentially working the holidays with the staff. And Harlan put together some numbers here for me, but the supervisors would be making substantially less per hour on that day than the staff that are
Sure,
supervising.
time and a half versus
Yeah.
straight time. Yeah.
And then it also reverberates through the whole sheriff's office, because I have my jail staff, my dispatch staff, and all of well, the detectives are part of the sworn staff who would be covered on a contract, but the jailers and dispatchers are also subject to working holidays, Sunday through Monday, and all holidays in between. And I think out of fairness, we need to consider that for them as well if we're going to do it for the patrol staff. So those are two issues that I just want to bring to your attention, that I see coming. Harlan, if you want to present some numbers.
So this has to do with what how it would affect your budget, basically. I mean, there's a fairness issue, that's part of it, I get,
Yeah.
but
Well,
there's
certainly
going
it's
to be a
gonna
budget
affect-
issue.
Certainly it's going to affect my budget, but I'm here on the fairness issue because
Right.
I'm going to have to deal with that. The budget issue, I don't know if we don't have an impact number on the budget.
Yeah, I do have a couple of
Oh, you
numbers.
do?
Yep.
Okay.
So I just put, and these are gonna be ballpark numbers because I don't know what employees' wages are going to be next year. So I just kind of did a little bit of a guesstimation, so it's ballpark. Related to the sergeants, the impact of the budget, it's about $7,500, $7,560 I came up with the impact for sergeants. And how I figured that out is there's 9 holidays. There would be 2 staff on every one of those holidays. And that comes out to 18 days. They work 12 hours a day. That's $216. And then I times what they would be making next year, which I don't know. And that came up to like $7,560. That's just for sergeants.
So that would be, that figure is, should they all move to time and a half on holidays?
Yes.
And work the day.
Yeah, and so, again, that reflects, nope, I need to pull back that number. Sorry about that. That number, 7,500, is not correct. I did it on the other ones because it's actually, you're only paying for half. You're not
sure.
paying for the, for the full, so,
Yeah.
everybody has a quick calculator.
So obviously, if the sergeant would choose to take the day off, it would not apply. It would only be,
Right.
in his scenario is if they worked all the holidays they were entitled to work.
Yep, so it would be,
Can I ask you a question? Do all other county employees, if they have to work on a holiday, get time and a half?
We do not have that in our policy that they would be working. The only people that this would be subject to would be the sheriff's office,
Okay.
since they're 24/7 operations.
I take that back, so I apologize. So the sergeants would be $3,800.88. So that's, because it'd be about half of their,
Increase, yeah.
half of their wage. For the dispatch center, did the exact same calculations. It's going to be half of their wage. I just did an average wage of like $24 an hour. So that's ballpark. And so at $12 an hour, it comes out to be $5,500.
And that would be all dispatchers, not just the dispatch sergeant.
That would be all dispatch and the dispatch sergeant, all of them. I mean, it depends on who works. And for the jail, it'd be about $10,800.
We're
So
up,
can you total that up?
we're up to
What
18,
the grand total is?
19,000.
No.
Yeah, we're 18, 19,000, something like that.
Yeah, and again, these are just rough numbers. You're looking at $20,000, a little over $20,000 to the overtime budget. And it'd be, broke out, because we have each division is broke out, has its own overtime budget.
Okay.
You do have an overtime budget as well. It's
Yep.
just that they weren't getting it.
Right. Yeah, this was not part of that.
Yeah.
And to be all honest with you, I wasn't even concerned about the budget effect. I'm concerned about the morale effect.
Okay.
So,
Me too. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we have to be fair,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
So tell me you have the money, please.
my proposed 2022 budget did not include that.
Oh, that's bad.
Well, I did include some additional money in the jail overtime budget to be more reflective of what we actually pay. We've had a number of years now where we have staff quit in the middle of the year or leave, and then it takes time to fill. So the overtime generated by filling those shifts is partially offset by the money saved by the regular wages. Typically, in a perfect world, if we were fully staffed for an entire year, our jail overtime would be right around $50,000. That's what I included in next year's budget proposal. That's an increase of, it was an increase of like $15,000.
A little less than 15, yeah.
So I have included more overtime in my budget next year, but it's just to be more reflective of what's realistic, what's going on up there. So,
And this would be an additional, just for the jail budget, would be almost $11,000
Okay.
and
that
if,
we would have to find in that overtime, which would bring us back to,
and again, that is if everybody worked the holiday. A number of employees take them off. So that is the worst case scenario there,
Okay.
is if everybody worked.
John,
I don't see that we have to change the budget for it, because they can amend it, if they come up short, and just do it at a later date when they need the money.
that's what
Okay.
I was thinking too.
And historically, the sheriff as a whole has come in under budget. So, if trends continue, it could likely be absorbed,
Okay.
so.
Let's do it.
Let's have
Let's have a motion.
We're looking over to this corner.
Well, I don't feel like we
Yeah.
really have any other
We have a corner
choices.
over here who can guide us through this.
Keep
what this-
pull the reins back,
Well,
Dakota horse
what it
thing.
means overall.
No, I'm definitely in support of this, in regards to the fairness, but I would just like the exact language that you would all like added to the employee handbook, because this will have to be reflected underneath the holiday policy or portion of the handbook, so I just want to be sure that the language is clear and it's what everyone wants.
Highway department does overtime, right? Holiday stuff, if we have a blizzard on Christmas, don't they have to go in?
Yeah, but they're not scheduled to work those holidays.
Okay.
They're always called in on.
Okay, that's an
on their days off.
emergency thing,
Yeah.
okay. So the main issue is just the sheriff's department in there.
At
'Cause
the
you
risk of
guys have to work 24/7 no matter what.
Right, at the risk
so.
of sounding selfish, yes, it's because
No,
we are a
yeah, 'cause
24/7
that's your
agency.
job.
There are
Yeah,
no others.
And we
so.
need to support that and protect it, okay. So who wants to be our language person?
I'm not the language person. but-
You're the chair.
I think we're all in-
I am the chair, and
So spit
sometimes I'm the
something out.
language. And I'm glad Krista points out that any decision we make related to overtime has to be reflected in the handbook.
Right.
Look at you poised with the pen.
pen,
This is-
she's ready
The
to
pressure
write.
is too much here.
can I ask this question here real quick? Do you
Yes,
have the
Harlan, help me out.
language from the union contract that addresses that, and maybe we can use that
good
same
idea.
language?
Yeah.
Yep.
So
So
what do you got?
the exact
Let's-
language is, Employees scheduled to work on a designated holiday with the exception of the personal holiday and who work on the holiday shall be compensated at the rate of time and 1/2 for all hours worked.
Sounds good to me.
We would just want to clarify employees, what that means.
Okay, well, we're specifically talking about the sheriff's department right now,
So,
right?
and that-
All sheriff's department employees, which includes jail, detectives, management.
Exempt and non-exempt.
Yes.
Union, non-union.
Not to muddy the waters, but there are a handful of employees over there who work a Monday through Friday schedule, who on certain holidays that fall during the week, Monday through Friday, can choose to work those days if they wish, even though there may not be work to do. I mean, that's a union language, like a detective, for instance. There's certain days of the year, of the 9 holidays, I think it's 5 of them, that if they fall Monday through Friday, that's not the sergeants.
Right,
That's
but
just the sergeants.
yeah, I would say though that, that language should all still be covered under the union contract, will be okay there. So,
Okay.
but the sergeants, patrol sergeants, they don't get to do that. They have to work all 9 of their holidays in a year. mean,
I got you. Oh, yeah, I'm just thinking backwards on that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm muddying my water, not yours.
Yeah.
So
Good,
Krista,
'cause
why
I
don't
didn't- I was
why
having
don't
a
you
hard
make it
time
clear that it's
understanding it.
represented, represented and non-represented in the sheriff's department? Okay.
Sounds good.
I'll make a motion to do
I'll second.
Motion and a second to include non-represented employees of the sheriff's department in the overtime policy.
That should be okay?
Yes, that would address my concern.
Okay.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That will be put into the employee handbook, and that'll be our new policy.
Thank you very much.
Is a person able to just make a quick comment on related to that after?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. It would just be also, and I know you brought it up, George, and I appreciate that, that in the event that our budget in 2022,
John and I on exec finance.
Has an issue.
It was John's idea, yeah, and
Yeah.
it will, if you find your budget crunched, come to exec finance and we'll
Appreciate
make
that.
that happen.
That happens to all departments.
The
Most of the
overrun.
time. Most departments. Yes?
Who
Make it
seconded that?
fit.
Me.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
No.
It was a
You're
comment.
good.
Okay.
We're all good.
All right, moving on.
Thanks.
Oh, boy. Charts, we get to look at charts. Human Services reconfiguration. There's a couple warm chairs. Any place you want to be, Deb? I'm going to,
I have not yet. If you want to give a brief overview, that'd be great.
okay, turn on the mics, please, when you're, there we go.
I'm just pulling mine up here. So, as you look on the org chart, the first one that you have, it's, the first 3 supervisors, you'll notice, have 10 to 12 staff that report to them.
that.
No, org chart pictures.
This guy here.
Oh,
It's in our packet.
So the Aging and Disability Resource Center, Behavioral Health, and Justice Services
No,
Supervisor, are those the
well,
ones you?
children and families. So ADRC, Behavioral Health, and Children and Families all have 10 to 12 staff report to them.
Oh, I staff
The
numbers,
Justice
right.
Unit Supervisor has 3 staff reporting to them, so that's
Okay.
obviously uneven. There was a reason, I mean, things have evolved, we've added positions, and so there's a reason how it got a little bit out of line. The supervisor for the Justice Unit has resigned, and so we have a vacancy. So the unit supervisors and I got together and talked about what do we really need in a supervisor. And we've talked with the Human Services Board about this as well. And so we talked about reorganizing things a little bit. And so the second page is the proposal that we have. Just pulling it up, sorry, slow here.
what's in this now?
It's the one that's yellow highlight that says new structure.
Yep, yep. So, let me pull mine up, if you just give me a moment here, apologize. Okay. So, the ADRC looks pretty much the same, except that we moved the clerical position over to the very end to the fiscal manager in the business unit, because that makes sense that they'd all be together, and especially when we're gonna be all under one roof. I should talk to the microphone, sorry. And so we moved that one. The other position we moved was the elder abuse and guardianship social worker out of the ADRC, and we moved that under the behavioral health category. We're going to have to rename that behavioral health category, and I'll explain that in just a moment. So that, again, reduces the number of staff that the ADRC supervisor has to have. The reason we looked at moving the elder abuse and guardianship is we had quite a conversation, Jeannie was part of that, with a couple months ago at the Human Services Board about it's not a great fit with the ADRC. It really belongs with other types of adult services. So then the behavioral health, what that will become is really mostly focused on adult services. The recovery court social worker that used to be in the justice unit, that will come over into adult services. Our 3 CSP social workers will stay there. Our behavioral health, our mental health, behavioral health case manager position will stay there. We'll have a CCS worker and the adult protection, and then we're also going to add the youth justice CCS worker. The reason we're putting that in there is because it's a grant position, just like the recovery court is a grant. So we thought it made sense that we put those 2 grant positions. We might tweak some of this, and I'm certain we will tweak some pieces of this as we go along, but this is the idea we have. And again, the conversation today is really to talk about what are we going to do with that supervisor position that's vacant. So then that left, in behavioral health, as you notice on the front page, we have a lot of child disability services, CCS, birth to 3, CLTS services. Those are all services for kids with disabilities. And that used to be in behavioral health. So we have that, and then we have child welfare and juvenile justice. And however we slice those up by functions, one group got a lot and one group got too many, if we split them into units. So kind of on a whim, I thought, well, what if we just split them in half? So we have half the child welfare staff on each team and half the disability services on each team. And as we sketched that out, I kind of like the idea because a lot of our kids in juvenile justice or child welfare, the really complex ones, end up having disabilities that are served either through CLTS or CCS. And it made sense for them to be on the same unit, on the same team. So we've talked with our leadership team. I gave it to them and I said, this is a little bit of a crazy idea. And so we looked at it and they really liked the idea of this. They really liked the idea of these teams. So one team would specialize more on services for younger kids with birth to 3 and CLTS. And the other team would specialize on services for older kids with CCS, juvenile justice, and then the school social worker. That's not going to always work that perfectly. It looks pretty cool on paper, but families have younger kids and school-age kids. So it's not always going to work that perfectly. We know that. We've already talked with our staff. But it seemed like we could create these 2 teams, and right now, both of these child disability services and the children and family services, they have limited access to their supervisor because they're on such large teams. They will now be in smaller teams, and this seems to give staff a little bit more access to a supervisor. The 2 children's teams will work, they'll have a supervisor, but they're going to work very closely together. For example, I talked with the children and families unit right now, the child welfare unit, and they were a little perplexed, how are we going to do this? Because if we go to training on how to do protective plans, we can't just train one team and not the other. And I said, well, of course, so you guys will, as a discipline, will meet. Just as CCS as a discipline meets, we have a CCS worker in adult services. They'll have to meet even though they're not all in the same unit. So we will have different disciplines that will have to meet, but at the end of the day, it really helps. One of the things that we really need to do is kind of blur the lines between our units because families don't fit in just a unit, they cross lines. And so this really helps us with that. Our leadership team has looked at this. They're excited about it. The thing they like about it is it really advances the no wrong door concept that our department is working towards in terms of whoever you reach out to, whether it's a front desk person or it's a different social worker, economic support or management, whoever you reach out to, if they're not the right person for what you need, they will provide a warm handoff to what you need. They won't just say, here's a number, call that, or leave a message, but they're going to make sure that there's a connection coming back. Our kind of the basis of our no wrong door is recognizing that anytime anybody reaches out to us, whether it's a phone call, email, or coming to our front window, it probably took a lot of courage and a lot of motivation for them to get there. So once they're there, we're going to make sure we meet their needs and give them what they need so we don't discourage them. So what we'd be proposing then with this model is basically the justice supervisor position description would essentially go away. And we would take, Erin Herber's currently our children and family supervisor. We'd basically duplicate her job description. And then we would take on the behavioral health services supervisor, they have responsibility for CCS, CLTS, and birth to 3 that still have adult CCS services, but we take those responsibilities and move them to the 2 children and family supervisors. While they might take on a new program, they're going to have less staff to supervise, so they do like that. Supervisors like this idea. And we already have a job description for a children and family supervisor, so we'd just be adding on some responsibilities. And in the new compensation study, they're all at the same or very similar grades. So that Krista and I have already talked about that's not going to create any issues that way with doing this kind of switching around. The Human Services Board gave us approval in September to look at doing a reorganization, and the Human Services Board in October approved this plan. The other thing I should mention is the deputy director position will work with the 2 children families teams to kind of figure out how do referrals happen. Who's on call if one team's on call one night, but they get a bunch of school age calls, juvenile justice calls, and they're in the other team, how does all that work? We haven't figured out those details, but we know we can figure them out. And the deputy director, I've been given direction by Human Services Board to have them do a lot more with the supervisors, so this really gives them that opportunity to do that. The timeline that we're thinking of is if we can get this approved, we'd get the position description finalized into Krista and get it posted. Then once we get that supervisor, the supervisor and Erin, the other children family supervisor, and the deputy director would meet for a few weeks to figure out these processes before we switch any staff around. There's no point in switching staff around until we know what we're doing. Because there are a lot of details. This is a 30,000-foot view of it, but and Jeannie's worked in child welfare, so she knows that there's lots of detailed questions about does this go here and how does this go, and even the child disability services teams have questions, and they're all appropriate questions, but they've all agreed they aren't questions to stop this from happening. They're just things we need to resolve to make the details of it work. So, yeah, thank you. That's the word. So, so that's kind of the plan that we have, and that's a proposal that we have. I don't know what questions you have. I probably talked too much Human Services lingo, so if I need to translate letters, let me know. And thank you, John, for sharing.
Yeah.
Any questions?
It's a good idea, good plan.
It's a little different, but we also realized, and I shared with the Human Services Board, that this grand plan of ours is, there'll be pieces of it that aren't as grand in actual application as we thought, and again, we'll have to make some tweaks as we move along. But we're going to work with staff, and we've met with staff, and we've said, you have a lot of questions, but you also probably know a lot of the answers. So we want staff to be really a part of helping design this, because they're on the ground, they're doing the work, they know how things need to happen. So we haven't gotten any opposition from any staff on this at all, so.
So to recap, you're down a supervisor. A reorganization at this time would enable you to hire a supervisor over one of the teams, is what it sounds like.
Right, so basically, we would kind of retire the justice supervisor position description and then duplicate the children and family supervisor position and just add a few programs into there from the behavioral health supervisor position. Krista and I have had lots of emails on this.
Okay.
Actually, it was interesting because we went back and forth, and she says, send me a position description. I'm like, geez, I don't know. And then as I looked at it, I'm like, well, it's basically Erin's job description, and so that made it a lot smoother.
So what do you need from us? A motion to approve this plan? And
I would think that'd be appropriate.
okay, and included in the plan
Put
is
your mic on, Jim.
Yeah, there's nobody there to turn it on for me in the
Do
other
it.
room, I'm so sorry.
There we go.
You need an approval to support this plan with the caveat of the juvenile justice supervisor being transformed into a family services supervisor with a few little adjustments based on what Team B would
And
look like.
they weren't just juvenile justice, because they also supervise recovery court, so they were the
Right.
justice. Yeah.
Okay. And this is makes much more sense, so like one person is not supervising like 10 people and, yeah, or 12 and somebody else not, it's much better. So would you like me to make some kind of motion? I would make a motion to approve the new structure of the Human Services Department, including the transition of the juvenile justice supervisor to a family services supervisor for one of the teams. Team
I'll
B.
second that.
Second by Johnson. Discussion. We have a hand in the gallery. Yes.
So the timeline is, by the time we get this posted and applications in and a body on site, it's probably a month and a half, 2 months. And then we're gonna need, like I said, at least a couple weeks for that supervisor and the other supervisor and deputy director to create the processes. So I've had some staff say, when do I get a new boss? And I said, in fact, one person may have to move from one side of the street to the other. And I said, don't pack yet, you got a few months on you. So that's kind of what we're thinking of. Does that help answer your question?
First part of it, yes.
So Tim, did you have an IT question? I mean, are you speaking just out of curiosity or from your IT hat?
Well, we'll need a couple weeks to reconfigure all the security for the different groups. Oh.
Okay.
We haven't assigned which staff is where exactly just yet, so, and again, we'll probably do that once that supervisor starts. So we'll make sure we give you a few weeks to do that.
Well, and we'll have to sit down with you to go through the
Yeah.
breakdown and then how you want to distribute the authority into the various directories that you have.
Okay, we can do that.
The details.
What are you looking for?
Ron Johnson.
He just stepped out.
Oh, okay.
The other nice thing about this plan is the screening decisions in child welfare are very critical, and sometimes they're really hard. You know, when you can only make decisions based on what the caller has given you, and sometimes, again, we want to respect people's rights and not send investigators to your house unnecessarily, nor do we want to compromise the safety of children. So having a second supervisor that can back them up when they're on vacation, or somebody to talk to when you're trying to make those screening decisions. I know we're using some lead staff in that capacity right now, but I think that will be really helpful, because that's really hard work.
That causes sleepless nights. It does.
All right. We have a motion and a second to approve the reorganization of the Human Services Department. This has been approved by the Human Services Board, and it would require some effort in terms of bringing people up to speed, working with IT, getting it into the HR and job descriptions and so forth. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, it has passed, and you go forward with that. Cell phone policy, updates, discussion, lots of yellow and green on this, green and red, I don't remember.
One yellow.
Oh, here we go, this is personal cell phone, this is
Yep.
the Christmas one,
Correct.
yes, okay.
Yes, so this was recently brought up by a department head that we just wanted to revisit this, and we did discuss this policy at the last department head meeting we had. As you're looking at the handout, the only piece that we had to this policy was in red, so that was literally the entire policy. So all the updates in green are what has been added. It's just a draft policy at this point, looking for input. I did pull from a few other counties to grab their verbiage in the green section, so that's where I came up with that. Since this policy has kind of been distributed and out and about, I have had some feedback from staff. The biggest one was adding potentially the ability to use a GPS while driving under the cell phone use while driving portion of the policy. It's not in this language, but like I said, that has been brought up. I'm not sure if Derek or Tim or Deb had any other input in regards to the policy as it's written.
I know Derek does.
Okay.
So Derek, why don't you come up and,
Well, and using CPS is really important when you're a social worker in the middle of nowhere trying to figure out where you're going. But
the
sometimes
Trempealeau County
Bluetooth-
is not the middle of nowhere.
No, but you can be.
Fine there from here.
Oh,
If you have Bluetooth,
okay,
though, but not every
just a
car
little
has
off.
Bluetooth ability, it can stream right through that, you don't, your hands free, or whatever that's called.
So, I was trying to, having read this, I was trying to figure out what your issue might be. So I'm all ears.
All right, so my first issue was the GPS and hands-free, because I don't know my way around the county. And I use my phone for it because the navigation in my car is like 5 years old, so it's not up to date ever. Another issue I had was at no time is checking personal social media, personal email acceptable during work hours on business or personal phones. We have a lot of time where we have to be set up before people get there, and we're sitting around for an hour waiting. So I think there should be something about like department head discretion in there, because if we're waiting for something to happen, why wouldn't my staff be able to, look at their Facebook or something while we're just sitting there? It's not interfering with their work. So I think there needs to be something about, as long as it won't interfere with their work. And then I also think that there's a whole section on here about using personal cell phones for business-related work. And I think that the county should provide cell phones if the employee needs to have a cell phone. I think that there shouldn't be people using their personal phones for work-related stuff. The county should provide a phone. So then all of that would fall under business cell phone use. And those are all my thoughts.
Okay, thank you.
I think there are,
I think there are employees that have to use their personal cell phone because you don't have a business one, so.
And don't want one.
Don't want one. Why
Don't
would you
want
not
one.
want to?
carry two phones.
Yeah.
Pain in the ass.
This proposal
Uh-oh,
is
you're
about
on
15
TV.
years behind the times.
I agree with you.
Um,
Agree with you 100%.
We're exploring the possibility of trying to remove excess. We have way too many phone plans the county's paying for as it is. And there's got to be a cheaper way to do it. We also have an archaic phone system that is potentially going to be partially replaced by allowing departments to make having a smartphone a requirement of the job. You can't be an IT professional and not come into the job with a smartphone. I have no way to forward my phone to my phone where I'm at. I have my own Google Voice line that I'm forwarding my phone to so that I can get calls on my phone.
Explain that to me. Why could you not get calls on your phone?
Well, forwarding the phone directly to it, I can't turn it off. So then if I'm sitting at home on a Saturday and my work phone rings, I'm getting calls from people all over the place. Google Voice allows me to say, oh, that's coming on my Google Voice line. At 5 o'clock, I can just let it go to voicemail. And then I also, we're looking at a situation where soft phones, which is a technology that's been around for 10, 12 years.
Oh, longer than that.
Longer than that. So some of the projects we're going to be looking at going to next year, we're going to be piloting with certain people the idea that you would have a hosted phone that's out in the cloud, and then there'd be, when I make calls for the county, it's on an app inside here, so it doesn't have anything to do with my personal phone. You wouldn't have to collect it if there's a FOIA request, because everything's done inside the app. I could text my staff, I could make phone calls, I could receive phone calls through work on my personal device, and it really wouldn't affect me. I, as an IT professional, don't want a second phone, so it's hard for me to ask for a stipend, but in other departments, they may say, well, I'd like a stipend, but even if we paid them $20 a month to provide their own phone, your county's saving money. Of course, that doesn't work for certain departments. The sheriff's departments, their phones are used to collect evidence, so that absolutely has to be a county-provided smartphone. But perhaps highway staff, land management staff, health department staff, they may have those limitations, they may not. But we have to start exploring that. And we also have to gather the problem of the issued phones for the county. We've got no control over what goes out in IT. We have to support them, but some people have Androids, some people have iPhones. There are 15 different flavors of each that departments choose. Some of us go through Verizon, some through US Cellular. We're not directing any of the cellular investments that we're making. So it behooves this organization to really look seriously at the phone policies and what we're going to do going forward with the technology, because the status quo isn't working for many people, particularly with remote work becoming such an important part of our operation.
Well, and I know I have been with people in land management, like when we were at the Great River celebration, Rob Grover used his cell phone to tag into Facebook to document the film that we were taking there. So, and he uses his personal phone. But they use it a lot for when they're out doing stuff, right away it goes onto the Facebook page for the county through his cell phone. So this would be a little complicated.
So there is a line in there, though, that says some employees may use their personal cell phones for business-related purposes. So it does give that ability.
They're very connected to social media.
Right.
Some of the people, a lot of county people, so.
Well, there's good reason to have that language in there regarding Facebook, because some departments, it's very untoward to have an employee posting live updates to Facebook in the middle of the day, and there's citizens out there going, aren't they working today? Why are they posting to Facebook in the middle of the day? I can see why you'd want some language in there, because perception equals reality to the eyes, in the eyes of a taxpayer. If they think that you're goofing off on Facebook all day, that's going to smear the whole organization. So we have to have something.
Right.
I feel like this probably needs more fleshing out and more departmental control, because each department is very different on this. And I'm strongly encouraging the organization to unify its cellular control so that we can have we have lines that I'm sure aren't being used. I just feel like we're wasting money.
Deb, what was your input? Find a microphone.
So I was on the committee a few years ago and we redid our HIPAA policies, and we do have a social media policy, and it says that employees aren't supposed to be using social media during paid work time. Their lunch is not a paid work time. So that policy does allow people to use social media during their lunch break. I have advised staff, again, just as what Tim had referenced, is the perception from the community. If those county workers are playing on their phones during the day, what does that say about the work we do? But the way the HIPAA policy is written, it says only during paid work time. So I just want to clarify that this is a little bit inconsistent with that, and so we'll have to fix one or the other.
I want to go back to a number of things that Tim said. It sounds, my understanding from what you were just saying is that the employees get to, if they're being assigned a county phone, they get to choose which provider and what kind of phone.
The department chooses.
The department chooses, okay. So
I have no control over cell phones.
the other issue that's addressed here, and I think appropriately, is once a personal cell phone is used for county business, it's now eligible to be requisitioned for an open records request. Yes, so that becomes, I would think, problematic for people who want to maintain their privacy there, and whatever information is on their cell phone. The other thing that struck me is this idea of a soft phone, one in which an application on your private phone is basically your second phone that operates in the cloud.
Correct.
That isn't even close to covered in here in terms of what that means for communication, for how we do our work, that sort of thing.
I didn't mean to include so many extra sauces in the gravy to add confusion, but I just wanted to demonstrate that what we're looking at is a fundamental change in how the organization leverages county-issued and personal smartphones, and I don't want the policy to limit the development of how we move forward on that. I think you have to protect yourselves, and HR is right to go ahead and update the language, but you have to be aware that we want to encourage enough flexibility so that moving forward, we can do the things that we need to do to save the county money and be more effective in productivity.
The original policy was in February of 2010, so you're trying to tell me that things have changed in the last 11 years?
In some ways, yeah.
Technology.
At the time, it would have been rare, yes. So I think what we're hearing is back to the drawing board.
So,
This could be like a 10-page
Yeah.
policy.
So Tim, I guess I don't know where you're at in the process of the soft phones and all of that. I mean, do we want to look at that once that piece is implemented, or what are your thoughts there?
I have no objection to you implementing this language because the board is pretty amenable to making changes as necessary. I just would like to include some language that allows the departments to experiment with procedures and policies that they can leverage. My staff will not take a county phone. They do their stuff on the personal, and they understand that you can't use their personal text to do things because then that means their phone could get confiscated. They use the applications that are provided by the county so that it's in the cloud, and then everything they're doing is using county software, and you don't have to confiscate their phone to see what they've done.
Right.
But there's other departments that it's shades of gray. So we'd want to work with each department individually and figure out how to shape the policy for their particular organization so that we're not creating work impediments.
Our concern would be liability, open records requests, and you mentioned it, public perception as to what it is employees are doing during the course of the day. John was at the Towns Association meeting on whatever Tuesday that was, and the DATCAP representative in charge of identity theft investigations was asking who has a smartphone. There was a fairly large minority who were still working with flip phones. I was sitting at the table with most of them. But the next question was, who has 2 smartphones? And he pulled 2 smartphones out of his pocket. 3 or 4 hands went up, and he said, "You work for the government, don't you?" So apparently in the state, and it was true, apparently the state policy has to basically say, this is your work phone. Keep your private phone separate. And you're telling me that there are ways to work with just one phone.
That's how it was when I was a state employee.
2 phones?
2 phones, and it was a pain.
That seemed to have been the impression from those who've
The,
had 2
the,
phones.
the beauty of it is that even if you're issued a county phone, the 2 things blend together magically anyway.
How do you mean?
Well, if you're sitting on a county phone, you're a deputy and you're driving around, you can't get the thing to work. You pull out your personal phone and they just start texting each other anyway. It happens all the time. Your work gets blended in. If I go check the Brewers score in the middle of the day on my county-issued phone, is that a firing offense or what's actually harming productivity? What's actually making the organization move forward? And you have to carefully look at how you craft all these things so that you're not making people feel like you're looking over their shoulder, but at the same time they have a job to do, and you need to get the product or the result that you're looking for. So it creates all kinds of back and forth. It's a really complicated issue.
Well, and one of the things I found being a supervisor with state employees, I found they were answering texts and phone calls at 2 in the morning because they would text me. They were working day and night, and not really shutting off when they should be shutting off because the phone rang. They wouldn't turn off their phone, so it creates a problem of people overextending themselves as well and not knowing when to stop working.
Which, of course, extends problems for HR because there are those workers who aren't exempt that shouldn't be checking their stuff in the middle of the night.
Right. It is problematic. So
But we have a policy around that because we were advised by our state groups because there's been litigation that there's a caseworker texting a client back and forth till 9, 10 o'clock at night. The caseworker goes to bed. The client continues to be in distress. They text the worker and say, if you don't get back to me, I'm going to end it all, and they did. And so we are very clear with our staff on their work phones to be, I will answer this phone from this time to this time. If you have an emergency, call dispatch. And so we've taken care of that issue
Good.
through making sure that we've addressed it through our policies.
They can still check Iwasakwas from their phone and do, it's crazy what people will do when they have a work phone that they just don't know how to turn off, so.
And there are new applications in the workplace that are just as addictive as Facebook for some people. I don't know if you've heard of Slack, but in the tech field, Slack is basically the Facebook for work environment. You know what I speak of? And it creates huge headaches for management, but it also, people get a lot of stuff done. So it's
So Slack doesn't really make sense as a name
Does
for
it-
that.
well,
does it
that's
in-
kind of the in-joke of
Right,
Slack.
right.
Does it enable teamwork, or what are you talking
Yeah,
about?
it's a Teams application that operates like social media. See, we have Teams here, and all the groups are created, our work groups, and we interact with each other in IT. I mean, it's constantly, I'm constantly messaging each other in our Teams app, and it's all archived and recorded, and it's fine. But there's the ability to like posts in Slack. There's ability to create channels. If you got a new work group, all of a sudden, somebody in Human Services needs to work with somebody in HR and Corp Counsel, they just whip up a Slack group and they start going back and forth and solving the problem before they ever have a meeting. Oh my God. So in certain organizations that have adopted it, it's become a very popular tool with the employees. The problem, it doesn't have the archival tools, it doesn't have certain pieces to it. So you'll have Slack channels that get formed inside an organization where it's a group of females who are angry about how they're being treated. Well, how does a manager deal with that when they're flaming management over their treatment? You can't shut that channel down, but at the same time, you're creating dissent in the workplace, and people start attacking each other, and it can get crazy.
And social media,
So-
social media.
Social media has been so successful that it's going to integrate its way into workplace applications, is what I'm saying. So this is going to get weirder as we go forward.
And we have to be on top of stuff. We can't be living in the 19th century or the 20th century.
We're in a little bit of
We
both.
can't.
No. And if you love your flip phone, they have new smartphone flip phones that you can get.
Yes, I know. Showing my age, if anybody's ever seen the movie Brazil, all of this stuff is mentioned in Brazil as well. So
Which version do you like? Do you like
the
the?
Monty Python version from
No,
the late 70s, early 80s.
No, Brazil. It had multiple endings. Did you know that?
Oh, yes, I know. And
Dark movie.
dark movie.
As our most Monty Python.
Yes. So anyway, enough of that.
Okay, so this
enough of
goes
the
back
Brazil
to the
stuff.
drawing board.
This goes back, and clearly.
I would say with a lot of
department-
department head input, because you all use
And
media.
to HR's defense, they tried.
Right.
But it was such a fresh conversation at the department. I mean, I think it kind of stunned a lot of people.
Well, and my thoughts are keep it as vague as possible, but enough to cover our butts, if that makes sense.
That does.
Because that's your job and our job.
Right.
Yes. And some of our departments, Human Services comes to mind, law enforcement, have state determined policies. And do you interact with the court system at all in IT?
I try to avoid the court system if at all possible.
Okay. I know you do personally, but does IT interact with the court system?
We do on occasion for certain projects that are not part of the state network.
Okay.
So if they have a printer issue or like the audio-visual equipment they have up there, we work on that, but we don't directly interact with them.
So they are covered by all state policy and the state
Yeah, they
equipment and
follow
so forth?
state policies that we don't touch their stuff until ordered so by somebody at the state.
Okay, thank you. Just one more department to think about. Are we done with this issue?
Seems like it.
For today? Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
No, this,
No, it's
not
good.
at all. Totally need to be talking about it. Okay, Personnel Bargaining Committees, assigned duties and responsibilities. I now have a copy of our duties and responsibilities, and I may have to, I am willing to say that I was not correct in saying that we have the responsibility to determine yes or no on the pay package or on the compensation
Yep. So only reason this is on the agenda for today is Rick Niemeyer had sent out an email to all department heads just asking that we put an agenda item on our committee's agenda just to review what the board rules are, provide any feedback. Since we are in an odd numbered year, this would be the time to make any of those changes. So just wanted to bring that up to see if there were any changes that this committee felt needed to be
So does the
made.
committee have any desire to grab a bunch of power from other committees and responsibilities and basically?
Not really.
No.
Okay, well, just thought I'd ask. So, to the issue that came up last month in terms of recommending to the Exec Finance Committee the approval of the suggestions by Carlson Dittman, is that it? In terms of the wages, that wasn't necessarily our call to make. I mean, we could recommend, but we couldn't approve, in other words.
Decided at the last
Okay,
meeting.
That's what we decided.
Yep.
And if that's, the Exec Finance Committee took it that way, the county board is taking it that way. Okay, there's a lot of responsibilities related to contracts and negotiations, and we do only,
One.
we do only one. Yeah, grievance and arbitration hearings. Well, actually, we do that as well, don't we, for non-union employees? And the policies and procedures, which we were just doing now, that's something that we do a lot of. There's and later we'll be doing the classification and compensation plan. I don't. Does the policy and procedure, does the handbook come under policies and procedures? Okay, there's no specific mention of that. If we're not interested in grabbing or giving up a bunch of responsibility, I think maybe just report to Rick that we're good with what we've got.
We don't need to power grab.
I was joking.
Oh, good.
All right, base compensation administrative guide updates. Is this directly related to, I mean, Carlson Dittman's name appears a number of times in here.
Yes.
So why don't you walk us through this?
So we have previously had this base compensation administrative guide. As you'll see, it was officially approved back in January of 14, and we've had a few revisions since then. It used to be, gosh, I think it was 24 pages long. As you'll see, it's been cut down now to 9. So quite a bit was cut out. The main piece is there was an HR piece only to this policy that was our internal equity analysis. So what HR used this for was when there was a reclass of a position or a new position created, we internally had to do an analysis on that position to determine where that fell on the grade structure. Since we were obviously adopting our new grade structure, that all basically goes away. All the numbers go away, all the amounts go away, and so that will now be done by Carlson Dittman going forward if this policy would be approved. Reason being for that, it would keep us consistent of what the new structure has now implemented. Otherwise, you can see my Christmas colors in there, the green and reds.
I know, you were into Christmas. Let's do Thanksgiving,
Right.
orange and brown.
Otherwise, the updates throughout this policy are really pretty minor. The process you'll see there, that has all gone away. We're going from a 20-step policy to a 16-step policy. The average increase between steps, that's all being revamped, all changed. Salary range structure, that is all being taken out since that's all changed. And again, it's up to this committee. If you're wanting to approve this today, my recommendation would be to possibly wait and see if anything does come up in the next month or two throughout the compensation study in case we need to tweak this at all.
I think that's a good idea. We could make a final decision. I mean,
Right.
that's my thought
Yeah.
in November.
I just wanted you guys to get your eyes on this ahead of
Okay.
time to see if
Yeah.
there was anything else that you felt was necessary to be changed.
I circled a number of things. If I
Yeah, if you want to
add.
maybe stop up and meet with me and we can go through it, would that make sense?
Don't want to deal with it now. Okay, that's fine. I will do that. Okay, if anybody else has any issues related to this specifically, do the department heads have the revised edition to comment on, or?
Nope, this is just the first stab at it that
Okay.
we've seen.
Okay. Actually, there is one in here that I wanted to mention to
Yeah.
the whole committee, and that, actually, there's a number of them, but one had to do, what page are we on? Page 4. Nope, let's go back. It's on page 4, but it's also on, okay, let's go back to page 4. This is on the creation of new jobs. If, and I seem to remember it someplace else in the language, it has to do with listing the minimum requirements and responsibilities for the job. The issue we had with the Whipley study was some department heads heard that and then absolutely pared down the job descriptions to the point where, if you know, can you sit, can you walk, can you work a pencil on a computer, do you have a degree? And so when the wage analysis came back, those positions, even though they were responsible for a lot of important stuff, were ranked quite low. So oh, here it is. It's actually on page 3, the purpose. A job description is used to describe every job. It is intended to document the minimum requirements of the job as it exists at the present time. And my suggestion was going to be just to eliminate the word minimum, because, I mean, that's my suggestion, because it is confusing in a way. The minimum requirements for a job that's responsible for enforcing state statutes are basically a bachelor's degree and the ability to drive a car, you know, and that doesn't reflect the responsibility involved in the job. So that's my input, and I wanted to raise that.
I agree, because I think a very detailed job description really helps in having the employee know what their responsibilities are, and it's really useful in the hiring process when you're doing interviews. If we have a minimal we don't want the minimum expectations for people coming in. We want quality, high-quality people, so. And it's only fair to the employee to know exactly what's expected of them, especially if we're gonna hopefully begin to do employee evaluations in 2022. Okay, good idea.
It's reverberating after
Well, you're
10
right.
years still.
It was such a, and I can just hear some former department heads who are really struggling with Whipley and how underestimating what their employees did. It was really bad. So we don't want to go down that route again. Okay. And I don't think Dittman did that. Carlson Dittman, they were they were really thorough, so, okay.
Now it's time for the updates.
No, did we do 9?
Base compensation, Minister Guy.
Oh, yeah, we did. God, I'm sorry.
Does this seem to be more? The shaded part's the good stuff, right?
Yep, so the shaded part is the filled position, so there's actually been some updates even since we've sent that out. So for 2021, we have filled 39 full-time positions, 6 part-time fill-in, and 9 limited-term positions.
And the updates?
Yes, so our compensation study update, I know you all heard from Patrick Glenn at our Monday night county
No,
board
I mean the
meetings.
update to the filled position. I
Oh.
noticed that we have a new person in extension.
Yes.
It started today.
Yep.
So that position has been filled?
Yes.
All right. Anything else? Any other new positions? Okay. So let's go back to the compensation study update.
Yeah, so like I said, Patrick was here on Monday night, gave a presentation to the county board. Next steps as far as approval goes, I know it's planning to be kind of built into the budget at the November 9th meeting, I believe it is. But my question for this committee, do we need a resolution for it to go at that meeting?
Patrick, in answer to my question about what responsibilities do we have and next steps, was willing to communicate with you and Rick in terms of what other counties have done for resolutions, not only to approve to close out the previous compensation plan and then embrace the Carlson plan. And there were, the question of the resolution about the actual compensation, the 412,000, whatever it was. I think that needs to be a resolution, so you actually should probably talk to Patrick and Rick about that.
Okay.
Have you gotten any feedback from department heads or staff about is it positive, negative? Because we're no matter what we
Right.
do, not everybody's going to be happy.
Yes.
And we just can't, it's not in any realm of possibility to have everybody happy.
Right, yeah, and that's exactly right. I've heard good things and I've also heard bad things. We're still working through some of those very minor tweaks of, this person absolutely needs to be making more. So for example, in our sheriff's office, our sergeants need to be making that $1.50 more than the
Right.
detectives and patrol deputies. So we're still working through some of those minor details.
But what I love about this process that I wasn't here for all of Whipley, is that appeal process, which
Yes.
was totally missing before.
Yep.
People just had to deal with the cards they were dealt.
Right.
So at least there's that option for people who really feel strongly to appeal it.
Right.
And I hope everybody understands that,
Yes.
is out there for them.
Yep, so what my plan is, after it goes through the November 9th meeting at County Board, a memo will go out to all staff stating their new grade and their new step, and then kind of explaining what that appeal process is
Okay.
if they don't understand.
Good.
I do want this committee to know, so there's and this was new to me, I learned this on Monday night, there's the pre-appeal process and then the actual appeal process.
First time I had heard that too,
Yeah.
yes.
Yep, so the pre-appeal process is built into that $50,000 that we paid for.
Okay.
But the actual appeal process for them to do additional, looking into that position will cost us extra.
I
Okay.
caught that as well, yes. Yes.
So
If
just
you
wanted
want
to
us
make
to,
you
yes.
aware that there will be that, but we'll cross that bridge once we come to it.
Okay.
The other piece, though, that we are going to need to figure out between now and the end of the year is what we want to do with our part-time fill-in employees. So they were not evaluated throughout this compensation study.
Describe where those employees might be.
Yes, so currently they are at, I want to say it's our lowest graded position, except for, I've got too many pieces of paper here, I apologize.
Not in that folder.
This folder, here it is. So we have 8 positions total that are considered part-time fill-in. We have our part-time fill-in deputies, certified and non-certified, fill-in dispatchers, fill-in jailers, fill-in food servers, and then meal delivery drivers in the Human Services Department, nutrition site workers in the Human Services Department, and then video productions assistants in the TV studio. So we're looking at 8 positions total that we'd need to come up with some type of a new compensation structure for them, since they're not going to fall onto our new grade system.
Oh,
A majority of them are connected to the sheriff's department, though.
Correct.
right?
Yep.
There's just human services and the TV that are not part of.
Right.
Okay.
So there's a whole host of things we can do. I reached out to a couple other counties to see what they were doing. Some people are doing paying 95% of the control point for their dispatchers, for example, and that's where their part-time fill-in dispatchers fall. We could come up with just a set wage for those employees, kind of endless options. So my plan is to work with the Sheriff's Office, Human Services, and TV Studio just to
Okay.
kind of come up with a game plan on what they think is going to be most reasonable for their staff.
It feels like we've done this before.
we just did
We
something for
did.
the TV studio
Yeah.
just recently.
But I think we've done it for the Sheriff's Department employees too, maybe 5 years ago or something.
Yes.
It was a while ago.
So when I started back in 2017, there was a separate schedule for all
Right.
the part-time fill-in in the sheriff's office. Back in, I have a note here, starting 1/1 of 2019, part-time fill-in positions were actually all added into our wage scale. So it was an easy way to administer it, and all those employees did end up getting a step increase year after year
Right.
after year. But we'll have to kind of be creative and see what
Okay.
what the steps are. But just so that's on your radar, that'll have to be done by the end of the year as well.
Oh, good, okay.
So I'll begin working with those 3 departments and kind of come up with
Okay.
some strategy, so.
Okay.
Events, I recently attended the Wisconsin Area County Personnel Directors Conference in Oshkosh last week. Lots of good topics, lots of good networking with some of the other HR directors throughout the county, or throughout the state. We also have a Wisconsin Public Employee Labor Relations Association supervisory training coming up next Thursday. So that was offered out to all department heads and any supervisory staff that wanted to attend. I believe we have 5 or 6 employees going. It's in Eau Claire at CVTC, so it'll be a full day training. And we have to start planning for Martin Luther King Training Day. That will be upon us. I actually just sent out an email to all department heads this week looking for input on speakers that we want to have, and if any departments want to give a presentation. At this point, I'm thinking virtual is probably going to be our best option just due to the uncertainty of where we're at with things and having to reserve a space. So I think we'll just plan on going virtual for 2022 again. Budget update for 20.
Tim seems to be a popular guy at the trainings, and he raised some issues related to the sort of faux social networking that goes on with, what was it called? Slack. And the dangers in a workplace, just in terms of relationships and bullying and so forth. So I mean, that's starting to blend into the workplace environment, not just the social environment.
Another thought I have is, to bring some of the focus back to why we have that day off, Martin Luther King, and talking about culture and diversity, and, to remind us of we still have a long way to go.
Do you have any speakers in mind that
I'll
you think would be?
about it.
Okay.
Yeah,
That
I have
sounds
a
good.
couple of ideas, so.
Okay. For speakers so far, I have Reliving always gives a presentation that's built into our cost of our contract with them, so they'll be presenting. I actually also heard a professor from UW Oshkosh speak at the WACPED conference I was at last week, talking about how to stay sane in a world gone mad, and he just had some really good self-care.
I love the title.
Self-care tips that I think it would be really beneficial for employees to
Yeah, good
just
idea.
reminder that
Okay,
those types of things. So that's where we're at right now with MLK Training Day.
okay.
As far as the budget update goes for 2021, we are over budget in our recruitment budget by about $2,200 due to using referral staffing solutions for the HR director posting. So do know that I may be over budget in that area, or I am, but I may be coming forward to ask for more.
Just come right out of yourself.
Great.
Just kidding.
We're also over budget in our property and liability budget by about $4,400 as we stand right now. So
Just because of the increase in the premiums? Okay.
yes, so we'll see how that all shakes out towards the end of the year. Otherwise, that's all I have.
John, you're so quiet today.
Yeah.
Why?
No, listening to good conversation. I did notice one thing, you do have a veteran benefit specialist, right?
We do, yes, that is the one update to that turnover report as well. Our new Veterans Benefit Specialist will be starting, I believe it's November 2nd. So there'll be about a month overlap that he'll have with the current Veterans Benefit Specialist, so he'll be able to get some good hands-on training.
And it's a guy, and he's a veteran himself, so.
Yes, he was a very good hire.
That went from like 40 and 8.
Went from what?
I don't know, I can sign up for 40 and 8. Cool.
Oh, jeez. All right.
Wow, this was painless.
We hit on a lot of really important stuff. So, next meeting date would be November?
November 18th.
18th, okay.
I don't want it to be November.
I thought there would be more discussion on the actual wage, because, like, we've got a couple department heads. El Rinca's got concerns that he's mentioned for the wage study.
Okay, I noticed he was on
Yeah.
pretty much the whole thing, but we have to approve it at the county board, and then the issues get raised and the
Right.
discussion
The
happens.
appeal process would start.
So I want to understand this appeal's better, whatever's approved at the county board, if you don't like it, you can appeal it after that.
Correct, just the grade can be appealed. The step placement cannot be appealed. It's just the grade.
Which makes sense,
Right.
because
It would, yeah, basically discredit the whole study if we're moving
Right.
steps around and.
right.
And that was brought up at the meeting on Monday night.
Okay.
Okay, November 18th? Okay, seeing no,
Wait, I have a thing before you end.
Okay.
Since we're gonna be discussing this again at the county board meeting on November 9th, maybe we might want to have, I'm blanking on his name from Carlson, Patrick there, just to answer questions. He can be virtual, because I don't know where he comes from. What, do you think that's a good idea, to be available to, because his presentation was so in-depth and so good that I think sometimes people drifted off because he talked about the holistic picture of what you look at in wage studies instead of, and I was hoping for more focus on just what was happening here.
and after.
But we need to understand the bigger picture to get to the why of why things are happening. But I think maybe some people might have wanted the nuts and bolts of Trempealeau County and what he was looking at here. So if he's available for questions, because nobody really had any questions, but I think people were like, wow, this is a lot to take in.
Okay, yeah, he'll be there for the nuts and bolts. Seeing nothing else, 10:14.
Wow.
Adjourn the meeting.
That's a
Everybody,
short
let's go do what we need to do outside of our roles here.
And we're talking 9 AM again?